In this 28th episode of the Misaal podcast, I am joined by Sennen Desouza. He's the co-founder and head of business development at Investors Lounge, a digital learning platform that helps Pakistanis make smart investments and manage their finances. In our conversation, we discuss his experience being part of the Nest.io's first batch, multiple pivots to achieve product market fit, and delivering content involving dry topics like stock trading and personal finance in Pakistan. Let's listen in. Welcome to the Misaal podcast, Sennen. How are you?
I'm great, Zayed. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I have been following your journey for quite some time, and it was like, one of those things where your name popped up on LinkedIn. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to reach out and see if he wants to be on. And so starting off with, you were the earliest batch at Nest.io. It's an accelerator that followed for some time too. And now, of course, it's rebranded kind of to Catalyst. But I would love to hear more about your journey so far and what product are you building and what problem you're trying to solve.
So a little bit of a journey. And I think throughout this conversation, I'll try and keep it to where we are right now, where we would want to be. So hi, everybody. My name is Sennen Desouza. I'm one of the co-founders for a company called Investors Lounge, which is an investment training and education company. What we do is we provide courses from everything from personal finance to stock trading, mutual funds, all of those things that cover the entire spectrum of personal finance and investing. We also provide market data, financial data, market monitoring tools, and we provide these game rooms and competitions and leagues where the thesis is that if Zahid has to invest his money in risky inflation-beating assets, then it is better for Zahid to prepare, to learn, and to practice to build skill and confidence before his hard-earned money is deployed in any kind of financial asset. That's the crux of what we're building. I graduated about in 2013 or 14 from IBA with a bachelor's in finance. A couple of years later, fast forward 2 years, maybe a year and a half, and we were the first batch of the Nest.io. Amazing place, amazing people. So my story kind of coincides with the growth of the ecosystem. I was there when the ecosystem was basically taking its roots. And so I've been lucky and I've been fortunate. I don't think I can call myself a seasoned entrepreneur, but battle-hardened for sure. So I've been part of all of these things, whether it's Y Combinator Startup School, Founder Institute, Google for Startups, all of those things. I recently was chosen for the Fulbright program for a master's in entrepreneurship and innovation from the University of San Francisco. But unfortunately, because of COVID-19, my campus was closed. And so I had to take my classes remotely. COVID was just hard on everybody, so I don't think I can cry too much about it. This journey has, because Investors Lounge itself has seen a bit of evolution and pivot. Right now, we are a retail-focused company. We started off as a retail-focused company, but midway we realized that we had to go for the low-hanging fruit because our thesis was not as strong as we had thought it was. Right now, with everything that's changed in Pakistan with digitization, this is where we feel we can go back and be strong at achieving our mission, which is to democratize financial literacy for each and every Pakistani out there.
You mentioned the product has had some kind of quite a few iterations by the time where you are right now. So doing that pivot, of course, in hindsight, when you look back, you of course you knew you were doing something that wasn't working out, so you made changes. So what was that like? Trying to basically kill your darlings, basically, where you are going after a problem and a solution, and you feel like you have got it, but then trying to pivot and moving into something that's more sustainable and makes more sense.
It was difficult. It always is when you're so confident about a particular thesis that you have. But, in due time, you also realize that you took it in your early days, a thesis that seemed fine. You had 250,000 investors. You thought the Chinese had taken a strategic stake in the stock exchange of your country. Everything was going to change. Cross-border investments are going up. The population, all of those metrics are still there that are still being used by startups to impress VCs. So our thesis was the market is only going up from here. But there were some systemic internal challenges in this market. So for example, if Zahid, right now, I somehow or the other convince Zahid that equities is the way to go, or equities should be part of your life. If I go past that bridge and somehow or the other convince Zahid, Zayed still has to do maybe 34 different signatures and submit quite a few documents to open up a brokerage house account or to open up a stock trading account. Now that inertia, those roadblocks is not something that we can control. That is something for the regulator, for the brokerage houses, so those factors we felt were not going to change anytime soon. It's been in the past couple of years. COVID, as unfortunate as it was, and it's been really, really hard on people, has accelerated digitization. That I feel has brought down the barriers for us. And now we're a lot more comfortable with the fact that right now, if we focus on education and training and building skill, then all of these other factors that were not in our control, those barriers have lowered down. It's always going to be difficult to kill an idea, but you move from strength to strength, and you listen to what people want and you listen to the environment. And I think you should be flexible and malleable that way.
Where the stage where you're at right now, how confident are you that you will be able to build an actual business out of it going forward with like whatever you're doing right now?
I have to be my team and I have to be very honest with ourselves. This is not something that I can promise to a VC that is going to blow up and you're going to have, 60 million a month in terms of monthly recurring revenue. There is a market. There is a dire need. Especially if you look at, Zayed, if you look at the past 2 months, we started off and we right now are a primarily stock trading, training, and education platform. But we cannot be just that, because everybody in this country, if you go and you ask any of your friends in Pakistan, who is your wealth advisor? I am 100% confident that 95% of them will say, what is a wealth advisor, right? Because everybody's trying to sell their snake oil, whether it's insurance or some mutual fund agents or whatever. Nobody's going to give you practical, actionable financial advice. So that problem is still there, right? And people are feeling the pinch, especially in the past 2.5 months, where whether it's oil prices, electricity, inflation in general, 25%, people are feeling the heat, people are feeling the pinch. So whether you look on Facebook or you look at our phones, the calls that we received, everybody wants to know, what do I do with my money? How do I protect my savings? So the usage of the product has gone up. So we're very, very confident in moving forward, given that the usage and retention is where it is at. Pretty confident moving forward that if we cover the entire spectrum and we start teaching people and imparting the education and training required, and we give them that toolkit, we're pretty confident we can build a meaningfully big, large-size business out of this.
So I'm going to I'm taking this, maybe it's not relevant, but I will try. And you can, of course, decide to if you want to answer this or not. But have you looked into, for example, like I get it, there's like a lot of hurdles when it comes to creating a brokerage account in Pakistan. But I'm pretty sure the youngsters, you're young, people who approach you are quite young, and they might ask you this question, like, I want to invest in Facebook, I want to invest in Apple. So have you considered maybe okay, fine, I know where your heart is. You want people to access the Pakistani stock exchange, but have you considered, what, we can try to do something in the space where we can get people in Pakistan to invest in stocks in Facebook and stuff like that. Have you looked into something like that?
So there's two ways to think about it. There's two ways that we've thought about it, actually. The first is, do we even allow people to trade through our platform? We don't right now, right? And we're just in education and training sort of imparting company. But is that something that we might consider later on? Do we have the basics covered? Do we have the advisory and the licenses by the SECP? Yes, we do, and we'll be announcing that not too far into the future. Do we feel that the diaspora here, the populace here, is more likely to be closer to the stock exchange, to the companies that are listed here? Yes. So that makes it kind of easier, but the market has its own challenges. Do we open up developed countries and their stock exchanges? So, for example, the US, whether it's NASDAQ, and tech companies like Facebook, We will have to find a way moving forward, sit down with the regulator and think also about whether there's exchange control policies, how much money you can remit out, how much money you can remit in. If people who are listening have paid attention to what's happened in the past 15, 20 years, right now there's no effective way to invest in capital markets abroad. Because there are certain regulatory restrictions associated with that as well. But all of that aside, the thesis is still simple. So, for example, you must have heard of Robinhood. It's an amazing application. It has gamification. It has its own critiques now coming up pretty fast because of the gamification. Our thesis is you give a person an app like Robinhood, and there are high chances that that person will trade very frequently and that person will wipe off their savings and their portfolio because they will treat it like just another gamification app. And the lifetime value for the user is very short. So before that, the journey for educating that person and building the skill and confidence before they actually use any brokerage app, that part is entirely missing. And we will continue to be in a problem unless that journey is covered.
Is it safe to say that no one in Pakistan is building the Robinhood of Pakistan?
So without taking a dig at anybody, there have been at least articles which mention that an app like we would love to either be that and without announcing something publicly, but we're working on something. But we would love to be that. But anybody who comes up with just a simple brokerage house application, just another stock trading application, without the prerequisite training, I don't think that's going to work. Applications have come and gone, but the number of investors, since I have probably hit puberty, have rotated somewhere around and that's been a long time, by the way, but it's been around 250,000. And so there are systemic challenges in the market which have to be solved.
So let's go back to what you mentioned earlier, that like you are more focusing on the education part and basically providing, dummy accounts to people or students to, play with the money, virtual money, so that they can learn stock trading. What kind of courses are we talking about? Are we talking about like courses where someone just learns more like the basics of stock trading, or are we talking about like, this is how you value a company, this is how you do, analysis? Are these like different courses, or is just like one course that gives you like, everything that you need to know about investing in the stock market?
So great question. And thank you for getting into that as well. The idea is to have, if anybody's watched Masterclass, it's brilliant in terms of production quality, masterclass.com, and they get the best out of every field to develop a course with them. So Serena Williams could teach you tennis, Neil Gaiman could teach you writing, literature, all of those things. We try and follow the same concept in Pakistan. So you will have basic courses, you will have intermediate courses, you will have advanced courses. You will have courses in stock trading, in mutual funds, in general personal finance, insurance, taxation, the entire spectrum, right? Because we cannot leave somebody with the basics and then expect them to learn themselves. All of those things, but even that is insufficient. We should be in the business of not education. We are in the business for meaningful, positive behavioral change. If Zahid just consumes a couple of videos and I feel Zahid is going to do well for himself, that is not going to happen. We will have to enact or bring about a meaningful change in your financial discipline and your financial behavior. For that, it will require the components that have worked for the world in terms of edtech. So not just gamification, but quizzes, things like that reinforce those learnings, reinforce those concepts. All of those elements that are best case practices for edtech. That is, we believe, the way where so students from 1 to grade 12 and even university, what have we been taught? We've been taught basic numeracy. That's it. All of those memes that you see where you have a student saying, do I know how to pay my taxes? Do I know how to invest? Do I know how to build generational wealth? And you see the school just throwing the quadratic equation at them. Those kind of memes are true because we've not been taught important, essential life skills. And that's the high level part of it. But at its root, we want to be and we have to be a behavioral change company that brings about a meaningful change in your financial discipline and financial behavior.
Are your courses mostly B2C, as in like you're directly going after the students and anyone wants to learn, or is it more like if you're providing like B2B, as in like someone can come in and say, you know what, I want to purchase this course for my employees so they can learn, like, you know, some I don't even know if this happens in Pakistan, where employers invest in employee educational development and all that stuff. So is that like, you know, is your business model mostly like B2C, or is this some component of B2B too?
B2C. And so if it's a student, if it's a salaried individual, we've been getting requests from everywhere. But that's a very important point that you've highlighted. Do employers invest in their financial well-being, or generally in their well-being of their employees? My guess is not too much, but it does come under something that's called employer branding in Pakistan. So even if the employer does it for employer branding purposes, we're fine with that. And right now, if I have to be very honest with you, Zahid, the past 4 months since March, we've turned to this pivot of B2C and this education and training bit. I've received requests from so many different areas for so many different new things that I just feel I'm evolving, and I'm a lot hungrier than I was before, and the business just keeps evolving, because we've even received requests so there's a startup called Abhi, right? Abhi Finance, which does earned wage access. And they came up with this amazing concept. They said, is it possible for you to, for SEC C and below, to create courses? Because even those people require basic financial literacy about microfinance, about micro savings investments. And I was like, in my past 7 years, I'm kind of embarrassed that I've never thought about that, right? Because maybe the business school that I went into was only upper middle class and above, because if you only had 500,000 savings, only then it would make sense for markets. But I've never thought about that, right? So these models and the way we package and deliver these will evolve. A lot of brands, institutions, educational institutions are reaching out, some even for certifications. So great question, and I just feel that in the next 3-4 months we'll come up with these. Our basic go-to-market is all of that is essentially focused around partnerships, because without tapping into these synergies, I don't think it's possible for one startup to go and try and teach the entire public of Pakistan about personal finance.
So I mean, so you when you are doing courses and teaching stuff, right? So I'm sure students would come to you, be like, you know what? Of course, you have there's a way for them to practice their skills that they're learning. But once they learn it, like do you happen to know how many of them actually, like, I know it's an arduous process, but do you think there are people out there after taking your course or playing around with this, virtual currency, they might end up, virtual currency has a different meaning.
So that's a very interesting question, because there's also kind of like our North Star metric, right? Where we feel, when I say paid subscriber is our North Star metric, seems very basic. But the logic behind that is we give off for the first 30 days free. You sign up, 30 days free. So if you want to just come in, watch a few courses and leave, that's perfect. That helps us, helps you. But then you're not really our long-term customer. We allow you to take the course, and you could do maybe 8-10 courses and leave for free. But the actual user who जिसके अंदर वो change आया होगा will convert to paid after a month, because then that person starts monitoring financial assets, stock markets, market monitoring, all of those things that go beyond the 30-day free trial period. And that's where we're saying, right now, I'd say we are having about an 8 to 10% conversion rate, which I think we need to improve, because smaller market, and with better content and with more value in the platform, I think we should be able to better that by quite a bit.
So the courses right now that you offer, they're all paid courses, right? There's no free courses.
Right now, we offer the courses that we offer. Everything that we offer is bundled into a monthly subscription of about 550 rupees a month, right? So whether you want to take a course, you want to participate in a league, you want to look at market data, market research, all of those things All of the access to this entire platform is available to you for 550 rupees a month. It's about, I think, $2.50 a month or so. So that's how we do it. We've not sort of put every course behind a paywall,
Sounds good.
separate
Sounds good.
paywall actually.
So, how many students of yours, in your experience and the data I'm sure you collect, that you see that they actually do go through the painful process of going and getting a brokerage account and actually investing in the Pakistani Stock Exchange? Do you have like numbers around that?
I can tell you something about 2022, right? And there are a couple of new apps and faces that have appeared in the what you call in the market. And I'd say about 15-20% of new accounts opened are these people from 18 to 25 to 30. Everywhere throughout this region, post COVID especially, and during COVID, whether it's India, it's Philippines, it's Bangladesh, all of these are being dominated by these young do-it-yourself DIY investors who feel that the collective trauma that the countries experience in terms of capital markets, whether it's 2008, 2009, whether it's a unprofessional, risky, greedy trader that's wiped off portfolios, all of that trauma is now being done away with. If people feel that they are confident and they can tackle whether it's mutual funds, stock markets, or whatever themselves, that's where we're seeing this new breed of investors come in. And I think that's where the future is at. That's our motto as well, to breed the next generation of smart investors for Pakistan.
So, if I were to ask you, like, how many people does it take to run something that you're running? Like, what would you say? Like, do you have like full-time employees taking care of the tech part? Like, how does your team makeup look like?
My team is right now two part-time people, but all in all, we're about 10 people, right? Who I'm very, very proud of because they've stuck with us through very, very difficult times. And out of those 10 people, three of us are co-founders. So there's me. I manage business development, partnerships, marketing. This Bakar Jafri, who's the main hero of the story because he's the founder. This is his baby. And there's Hamad Hashmi, who is the CTO or the VP of engineering. So these 10 people, and everybody's being almost paid market competitive salaries. Right now, we're pushing through. We've raised capital, very small amounts of capital twice, 2016 and 2021. We will need to raise serious capital moving forward. Otherwise, our runway is going to be a little problematic. But I would assume that at the very least, you would need 50,000 paid subscribers, which whether the institutions are paying for them, your employer or your educational institutions, or they're paying themselves. But I think that is the kind of critical mass that you need to achieve to have a healthy, well-functioning, well-oiled business.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the previous topic. So, as far as education is concerned, what kind of reception in a way have you received in terms of the feedback and everything, like the online courses, right? Like you're teaching this online. So, are people and are students more like now post COVID, are they more like accepting of the fact that you have to you can take a course online, you can learn from it, or are they still like have you received requests like saying class can you do this in person?
So, great question. Yes, we do receive requests periodically to deliver in-person training because many people feel that that's the way to go. I don't have a benchmark because I don't really know how we would have done before COVID because this was not our go-to strategy, go-to market. Post COVID, I have this feeling that a lot of people are a lot more comfortable doing this online. You see the hike in not just online courses, but also in stuff that you guys are doing. So Misaal's been doing brilliantly, Muzammel's been doing brilliantly, Junaid has been doing brilliantly with podcasts. And the way I see it, people are really, really hooked onto podcasts right now. Who would have thought, right? And Shehzad's doing a very good job with, I think, the Pakistan experience. Who would have thought people would have taken out 2 hours to put earplugs in their ears or earphones and listen to a 2 hour podcast? This was not happening before. I think the appetite for that and the comfort with that kind of media is a lot more now. and which makes our life easier, because if we try to deliver it all in person, I don't think we would be able to scale the way we are. It's spread across too many different places in Pakistan, and we won't be able to be, maybe that could have been worked out. But there are a couple of institutions anyway who are trying to do this. NIBAF is trying to do this. State Bank is trying to do this with the NFLP to some degree. But I think the future is online.
So you mentioned three of my favorite people. So yeah, they are all inspiration for me to, of course, be doing this. Of course, Muzammil, Junaid, Shahzad. So I mean, same thing. I used to ask myself that too. Like, will people listen to something for an hour, especially like involving something like for especially for me. So Shahzad, I think he's now going in person. Muzammil and Junaid are obviously doing podcasts in person. So when they record something, of course, the production value is great and all that stuff. For me, it's like, I'm very direct. Like, I'm just asking questions. Like, there's no like back and forth about like, kya khaya, kya piya, and kahan gaye the, and all those things. Like, that's not my concern here. Like, getting to the point. And so, but people do listen. That's also, it's a surprising like thing for me also, that people do listen and watch these videos. So content delivery is definitely changing, and how people consume content is also changing. And a lot of things that we assumed were true were actually not true. It turns out people like information, and if you turn that information into in a way that people are now getting used to it, then it's fine. They will consume it. So like, you are in the right, I would say like what you're doing is great. But eventually, like, I feel like to scale, you might end up doing in-person trainings too, but that's like the next step, right? So let me talk about, or let me ask you perhaps about, like, you went through, like you said in the beginning, you went through the process of incubation at a time when you probably had to explain to people what incubation is, right? So now, of course, no one has to explain that, but ecosystem has come a long way from there. So what was that like, in 2016, joining an accelerator like the Nest.io? How was that experience like?
I'll try to break it down in terms of how it is. So what is being marketed, everybody knows, what you read about these incubators. But what is the real value from these incubators isn't, I feel, when we started off, this was 2015 or 16, I feel not a lot of people had a great idea of, what they were saying. Looking back, it was early days. How many startups did you have before 2015 or 2016? So people either came from traditional business backgrounds and they were trying to advise young people on how to run tech startups. I don't think that there was too much value in that. The value was that the people especially at the Nest, especially Jehan, right? And all of the board that she brought together, there was definite value in the networks that they had. So if you had a clear idea of, if you could ask something, all I had, if I was a young person with clarity of thought, I said, this is what I want to achieve, but I'm so young, I'm so new to the market, I don't know these people. Can you help me? Can you do those introductions for me? Immediately. So again, it's like LinkedIn. You could use LinkedIn like Facebook, but if you're smart and you know how to play the right cards and you're networking the right way, you will extract a lot of value from that. Or otherwise, you could just keep posting, pictures of yourself or quotes every day. That's not going to take you anywhere, right? So it's all about how people kind of. So the networking to build partnerships, to build your sales funnel, as well as to the investors. Where we would not have had a platform to advertise our product to people who had capital. So those demo days and all of those things not only built our confidence, but our first round was in 2016, right? And that came through the Nest.io.
So would you say that it's now there are quite a few incubators, accelerators now. I completely lost track of it, and there was a point where I was tracking startups that were graduating from there, but it's just too many now, and most of them don't last that long. So I've stopped following that. So do you feel the value is still there? Like, is it worth it? Like, if I were to ask you, like, hey, many startup hai, and this is what I'm doing, and I really, really do need like like a network, right? Like access to network. So would you say like go this route and join an accelerator?
So for both the startup, in terms of expectation, that has to change. But also in terms of the incubator slash accelerator, their thought process also has to change. Like when we started off at incubation in the Nest IO, it was literally like maybe they got that wrong, right? And Jan would be the first to admit it probably, that we would have to be there from 9, one founder would have to be there from 9 to 6 or 9 to 7, right? It was almost like a classroom. It was all, that could be right. And to my best understanding, I don't think that was the right way to go about it, because you should be pushing your founders, okay, take your session, here's a meeting, go out in the field, come back with data, come back with customers. I think that feeling has kind of changed from keeping many incubators across Pakistan might want to host their startups in one place so that, it's good for PR, it's good for pictures, it's good for people coming for meetings. But at the end of the day, it comes at the cost of the founder being again, would be a mistake on my part, being too comfortable and not going out and doing what I should be doing, which is sales and insights from the market. If it comes at the cost of that for 4 months, you're going to be in deep trouble.
I have my thoughts on the incubators and accelerators, and I really hope I don't get in trouble saying this, but I feel that they are mostly like glorified internet cafes, and I think mostly there's not much work being done. That's because I just don't feel there is skin in the game. They don't have skin in the game in the sense that they're not investing in any of the startups. So they're providing space and all that. I'm not saying that's cheap, or I'm not saying that it's not valuable. But then again, they have no vested interest in the startup succeeding that way. So, which is a completely different model than what we have in the US, other places, right? So they have like a vested interest in like making sure the startups do succeed. So I think for that reason, I would just say like skip it. So if anyone is interested in joining, of course, do consider joining it. But if you really have to know what you are going after. If you are going after like meeting people, networking, yeah, it's a great place. But if you're going after like to hone your skills and maybe have people back you till the end, like I really don't think that would happen at an incubator. But of course, that's my opinion on that. So anyways, moving on. So when you when you started out, like I ask this every time I have a founder, I usually ask this question because it just helps me learn a lot more about like what assumptions did you walk in with? Like, were there things that you thought that you will be able to do, for example, when it comes to tech, when it comes to product, when it comes to market? But when you actually started working on those things, it turns out like you were completely off base, like you were completely wrong, or things don't work that way. Was there something that you experienced in that way?
I wouldn't be too often saying that almost all of our assumptions were incorrect, right? How do you achieve? And I'm not embarrassed to say that. Started off young, nobody to guide. Probably there really is, and many times nobody to guide anyway. How do you achieve product market fit? How do you collect data? What kind of tech you choose? What kind of sales is per month is a good amount of sales per month? You really don't have it. Maybe I'm a group of 10 people, and maybe you can pay each person, let's say 100,000, and that's good enough for you. Is that the way it should be? Is that the way it should be for tech? Is that the way it should be for VCs? How all of those things. I think two of the programs I think people should really attend is Y Combinator Startup School and Founder Institute, because their curriculum is really good. The curriculum, I don't know who the chapter who's delivering it. The curriculum is really good. So those kind of things. So I wouldn't be wrong in saying that exposure to people in Silicon Valley, to people from other regions who've made it, who've exited previous startups, I think what they say makes a lot of sense, because they've done it and they failed, and they'll be able to communicate it to you, and they will say, look, I made these mistakes. You might want to go and double check if you want to do the same. And I'm not in a position to maybe suggest that this is 100%, I'm confident 100% that you should do this. But these are areas in which you should, constantly be looking at. So all of those things, I think when we started off, early days, I think we were very confident because we were probably one among three startups that raised capital, right, back in those times. So we thought we were checking all the right boxes. It was very later on in life because we did lose a big chunk of our equity. We didn't realize it was a problem then. We realized much later on, and the people around us didn't think it was a too big a problem. It was only after conversing with people in Oman, people in the Valley, other VCs, and they were like, I think your cap table, your capitalization table is a little problematic, and it's going to be a problem trying to fix this. And we're like, okay, now this is something that is serious, and this is going to take some doing to undo. So a lot of those things, I think, along the way. But I would really suggest my time at the University of San Francisco, Y Combinator, startup school, founder institute, as well as these really smart people who've done it, who've exited before. Maybe you can pick up stuff that you would anyway pick up 18 months later, but those 18 months can make a world of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of startup content out there, there is so much out there now that it's like it's not you cannot make this excuse that, you know what, I didn't know what, like, you know, customer acquisition cost is and how to calculate it. Like you can't say these things anymore. You should know these things, and you know it's not something that someone has to teach you. I mean, I know I said some things about incubators, accelerators, but one thing I would like to mention here is the fact that maybe the business schools in Pakistan might not teach you anything about entrepreneurship. So that's the gap they actually fill, where they do teach you something about the entrepreneurship and how it works. So, you know, there's that, like, you know, I'm just dunking on incubators here.
So I'll be very honest. 2013 is when I graduated. It's not too long ago, right? It's 9 years. 2013, 14, 8, 9 years. Back then when I was graduating, the thinking was, unless you're in Engro or in Unilever or in P&G, you're a failure. So people had not even accepted other industries, let alone doing something on your own. And I'm not even saying tech startup is the only thing to be. You could be a manufacturing concern. You know, you could be an SME. I don't know. Over glorifying even the tech industry is going to be problematic moving forward as well. From a base that is not very literate, from a manufacturing base that you should try and exploit as well. But those business schools, for namesake, have started off these entrepreneurship programs and, you know, these spaces, but those are actually glorified internet cafes. I think the other accelerators and incubators are still trying their best. I don't know what the future is for them, but if they don't keep their game at, you know, if they don't bring their A game, I think even they're going to face problems. But in business schools, maybe apart from LUMS or something, I think it's not pretty great out there. I don't want to name and shame, but yeah, I think it's those are not functioning like they should function. At the very least, even if you are not imparting the right knowledge, create the environment, the environment and the motivation in people at the very least to go and pursue their jobs. At the very least, create in them the comfort that failure is fine, that they should be fine with failure, and why they should be pursuing entrepreneurship. The first course that I took at USF was philosophy of entrepreneurship. And we had 6 debates. That's all the course was about. And that was about who should be an entrepreneur, who is an entrepreneur, why should I be doing this? You know, because you're going to go into some territory that is uncharted and it's going to be really difficult. You should be clear on your head why I'm doing this. If it's just another Me Too thing, you know, you're trying to copy somebody's idea and you're trying to sound cool because the spotlight is going to be on you for a couple of months. Yeah, things are not going to go really well for you.
So I have a couple more questions before I let you go. So one question I have for you is, like, what is right now your biggest challenge? It could be technical, it could be market, it could be something else that's like not in your control or something. But what is it like that you are basically, you know, trying to solve, like, as of right now?
So I'll try to keep it really short, but I'll try to give you an analogy. So I'm probably 30, 32, right? If you try to sell my generation a cream that makes them look good today or tomorrow, they'll buy it. If I try to sell them a cream that's going to defy age and anti-aging serum, that's going to make them, protect their skin, and make it last for 20 years or whatever, right? Wrinkles and all of those things. Anything into the future, I don't think he registered. as a tangible benefit. So something like investing, which is like watching the paint dry, something that's long term, getting to think about things like retirement is a challenge, right? Talking to people who are so, and I think this is growing, so in love with instant gratification, whether maybe Instagram and things like that kind of just amplify that. How are you going to do that? That's why this nation became absolutely fell in love with cryptos, right? And they start going, crazy with Binance. But tell them about if I tell somebody that you could earn 750% in a week, they'll be willing to go all out. They'll take off from their offices and they'll miss their classes and go and take that shot. But if I say, you could earn maybe 75% in 10 years, and that's the way to go about it and to manage your risk and build wealth, I don't think it's going to register. Concepts of the future don't register. So I think a challenge on our end, and it's a great problem to solve, is how are we looking to communicate? How is our comms looking like? With being honest to the mission and being honest in our communications, because we have to be also, there's a regulatory pushes that. How do we deliver communications and the message and advertise in a fresh, inspiring way that makes people commit to and fall in love with what is available to them and what is right for them? The second is right now we'll have to move from equities to other things as well, because it's like an if I am only stuck with equities, it's like, I don't know, I like to call it equities mycene. Regardless of Zahid or, if you have gastro issues, if you have a headache, if you have a toothache, I'm trying to push equities down your throat, which is wrong. A, that could be the wrong fix. And B, you could probably not tolerate it well. That's the best kind of analogy I would look. Everybody's trying to push, their snake oil down people's throats. That holistically, to create a product that is holistic, interesting enough, and effective, that is a challenge. The third, I think, is regulatory. There are certain things in this particular sector that you have to be very careful of, that you cannot advertise, that you cannot say, and always kind of having those second thoughts of whether I can say this or whether that is not. That restricts your creative freedom and control. And within those boundaries, operating within those boundaries, obviously, is a challenge. And I think the last is overcoming collective trauma that people have had of past experiences. So yeah, those are
sounds good. So
pretty steep
like,
challenges.
to summarize your challenges, you're basically talking about mostly like behavioral stuff, which changes over time. People going from going after the plots and everything, going from plotistan to maybe like equities and other adjacent like instruments, financial instruments like bonds and stuff. So yeah, that definitely takes time. And so that's one thing that when we were talking about Robinhood, I wanted to mention it. I completely forgot that like here in the US, something like Robinhood was successful because there's already a market here. You don't have to explain to people most of the time that what a stock is. Like people understand what a stock is. So for Robinhood, it was basically like, let's just remove the $5 that people are paying every time they purchase a stock or sell a stock and make it free. So that was their entire play. But anyways, so before I let you go, one question I want to ask you is, of course, where do you want to take Investors Lounge? What's the North Star metric?
When I was describing the North Star metric was paid subscriptions, and that's very basic in that end. But if I had to consider a milestone that this is where we would want to be, we would want to, at the very least, whenever we towards the end of our journey, 10 million people, impacting 10 million families, and bringing a meaningful behavioral change in those 10 million people. That's why I say the product has to evolve to become that sort of fix for people, that where you feel that if you've taken these 3 months and invested in the Investors Lounge journey, you are a different person. You've re-engineered your life. Maybe that sounds like a very poetic or ideal thing to say, but I really believe that can be possible. And then there is that goal of hitting the 10 million number, that at least 10 million people, and therefore X number of people, 10 million families should be positively, meaningfully impacted by Investors Lounge.
Thank you. Thank you for being on the Misaal podcast. It was lovely hosting you and learning more about you and your journey. Like, I'm really, really impressed. I just want to say that on the record. I'm very impressed. Like, you are in the most difficult of regulatory environments and you have survived for this long. And so it just goes to say that, like, goes to show that you are absolutely a cockroach, right? Like, there's a term in startups is use cockroaches. You're absolutely a cockroach when it comes to these things where you're like, you know what, हो जाए, हमने लगे रहना है, and we're just going to face whatever people throw at us, or whatever the regulators throw at us, or whatever the market throws at us, and just keep moving forward. So really commend you on that, and best of luck in the future.
Thank you so much, Zai. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, let's just hope we don't have to face a nuclear sort of blast. Cockroaches that end. I think the difficult times should end here, and hopefully we'll come back a lot stronger. So yeah, keep us in your thoughts, keep us in your prayers.
Thanks for listening to the Misaal podcast. I hope you enjoyed the podcast and will thank me by writing a review or sharing it on social media. Make sure you follow and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Thanks again. See you soon.